you come for instant post-game reaction.
Oh, hell yeah.
This is Dubs OT.
Can't wait.
With John Dickinson.
Hey, JD, what you up to, sugar? Long time no talk to.
On KNBR 104.5 and 680. Streaming live at KNBR.com and on the KNBR app.
Throwing in the backcourt, Buddy Hield's got it. Buddy is dribbling, and Buddy lost it again. I don't know why they keep putting him in that position. You say the three had got in there, people would have lost their mind. Dickinson gets the rebound. Somehow they won this game 3 times. The 31-point lead, then enough in regulation, and they win in overtime. That was the craziest regular season game you'll ever see.
It certainly was one of them, but the Warriors are able to escape in Houston, and they do get the win by that final of 127-121 in overtime. They blew a 31-point lead in the second half. They blew a 5-point lead in the final 20 seconds, reminiscent of a couple of just catastrophic losses that the Warriors had last season. But they were able to get the game into overtime, and then Jonathan Kuminga kind of took it over in the OT. The Warriors defense as well. Maybe the Rockets ran out of gas a little bit. 1 for 12 for the Rockets in the overtime session. Jonathan Kuminga doing his thing, a bucket getter in a big-time way, with the Warriors not having Steph Curry or DeAnthony Melton. Draymond Green and Brandon Podziemski had fouled out. It was, who do you throw the ball to? And Jonathan Kuminga was the guy who wanted it, accepted it, and brought this game home in the overtime offensively for the Warriors, where it looked like it was going to be a catastrophic defeat, similar, as I mentioned, to the ones that they had last season. So 808 KNBR is the number, 415-808-5627 to jump in and join the conversation here on Dubs OT with JD on the Sports Leader. As the YouTube chat is open, appreciate everybody as always watching on YouTube and Twitch. As what a ride for the Warriors to get their 14th consecutive head-to-head win against the Rockets, 8-2 in the overtime session after being outscored 37-25 in the third quarter and 39-23 in the fourth quarter. So you add that up, and the Warriors were outscored 76-48 in the second half for the Rockets to come back and send the game into overtime. But the Warriors, again, able to survive. So they are 3-0 on the road. They are 5-1 overall for a second consecutive season. And now they get to head to the nation's capital. They'll take on the Wizards before Boston, Cleveland, and Oklahoma City to close out this road trip. And it looks like the Warriors are going to get Stephen Curry back into the fold potentially as early as Monday. And how crazy would that be if the Warriors wind up 3-0 in the games played without Stephen Curry to begin this season, assuming he's able to come back? But they are still 3-0, regardless of whether he comes back on Monday or if this thing ends up getting pushed to Wednesday. So wild night in Houston, and we are here to react to it. Man, so many things to look at as the Warriors jumped out in this one hot from three-point range. Andrew Wiggins was making threes, picking up right where he left off for the first 3 games of the season before he missed the last 2. He had 8 points in 6 minutes. Moses Moody. Warriors were 11 of 16 from the field to begin the game, 6 of 8 from 3. They pushed that up to 8 out of 10. It was 28-11. Jonathan Kuminga was putting his head down early, getting to the cup off the bench. The Warriors' defense just everywhere. Significantly better in the first half and much more in line with what we've seen through these first 5 games of the season in the first half tonight. 38-20 Warriors at the end of the first quarter, 12 assists on 14 made shots. They had 1 turnover. We talked about the 8 for 10 from 3 at the beginning, and then they missed their last 2. 10 players playing, with the Warriors having a couple of injuries and Steve Kerr shrinking the rotation a little bit, but 8 of the 10 who played in the first quarter were able to score. And the Warriors bench a massive story. And Buddy Hield, again, a massive story off that Warriors bench as he finishes a game-high 27, and the Warriors just doing it with the bench. 71 bench points. Now, the Rockets scored a lot. Torrey Eason, 27. Thompson had 18, but the Warriors got 50 for Buddy Hield and Jonathan Kuminga off the bench of their 71. Kevon Looney chipping in, Kyle Anderson chipping in, Lindy Waters and Gary Payton, he's chipping in a bucket. But the bench, a big story in this one as to how the Warriors were able to get the lead in addition to the defense and in addition to some really hot three-point shooting. Warriors were up 59-31, middle of the second quarter by 28, as Kuminga was just looking to take folks down into the paint. I thought he had a really good first half, struggled a little bit in his second half stint, but more than made up for it in the overtime session, where he basically was the Warriors' offense in the overtime session, and the Warriors able to get enough stops against, I think, again, a tired Rockets team, 1 for 12 in that overtime. So who gets your game ball tonight at 808 KNBR if you want to react to this one? And wow, I mean, how you feeling about this Warriors team? Now, they showed they've got a little bit of last year in them, but I think it's worth differentiating the fact that last year the Warriors lose this game. Last year, the Warriors straight up lost this game, I don't know, 4 or 5 different times when they had big leads, and even those 5 to 7 point leads in the final couple of minutes, or a 5-point lead in the final 48 seconds like they did in Sacramento, or a 4-point lead in the closing seconds. I mean, they have just blown a lot of leads. Against Denver, they had a lead at home late. I mean, they just found ways to lose games by blowing leads last year and really the last couple of years. But tonight they find a way to guide themselves through and ultimately prevail and get the win, 127-121. The great Greg Silver on hand in our San Francisco studios. Woo! Wow. I kind of gave the little first half recap. Warriors up 71-43 at the break, and things did turn in the third quarter and in the second half. We'll get into some of the details. The defense was in shambles in the second half, just a complete let up from the defense and the intensity. The Rockets got a little bit hot from three, especially in the third quarter, and then the Warriors just turning the ball over at some inopportune times in the second half as well. But all in all, when you find a way to win that game, you can take a deep breath. And it's on to the next, and the Warriors might have Stephen Curry back for the next one, and they're 5-1. And I think you can cherry pick a lot of the positives when you win a game like this, as opposed to having to hand wring and obsess over the things that were negatives.
Yeah, I'm just still kind of coming down on the heart rate a little bit. Everything was good, JD. You know, I was getting prepared. I had a lot of highlights ready to go. I thought I wasn't going to have to cut that much sound in the second half. Thought this was going to be an easy show to prepare for. And then I remembered what last year was like for us with a lot of the shows that we had to do on the fly, and just a nice old trip down memory lane. Only this time the Warriors held on. And I'm going to come in with my instant take. And maybe this is a little bit too reactionary to some of you, but I fully believe it, so I'm going to let it out there. That was a good thing. That was a really, really, really good thing that the Warriors just went through, because Brandon Podziemski, Jonathan Kuminga, Buddy Hield, Lindy Waters III, all of these younger guys that were part of last year or have never played with this team didn't have to fall into the trap of, oh no, here we go again. And it's a mentality thing that would have started in the 6th game of the season. Now, that doesn't mean they can't blow any leads later. It doesn't mean that this sets an entire tone for the rest of their season, but it might help prevent setting a really bad tone. And I think you need these young guys to know that they can overcome that. And what Podziemski and Kuminga did in particular as the young leaders, to just put their foot on the gas and say, okay, like, we are not losing this game no matter how loud the crowd is, how bad the momentum has swung in our favor. that was a winner's will I saw from the youngsters today.
Yeah, it was. And again, you don't want it to get to that point where you have to win the game that way. But once the Warriors got to the point where they had to win the game that way, they showed a lot of resolve. Again, you don't want to be in that position. Erwin Kwong already chiming in the YouTube chat. OMG, make your free throws. He had that one teed up before the game even ended. And the Warriors missed a lot of free throws throughout the course of this game that looked like they weren't necessarily going to burn the Dubs, but then ultimately might burn the Dubs. The Warriors had 50 free throw attempts in this game. 50, 32 for 50, 64%. So the Warriors end up
Wait, are we talking about the Lakers?
doubling. The Warriors double the Rockets' output in terms of free throw attempts, and they still, even with all the misses, 18 of them in the 64%, a plus 14 at the free throw line, which the Warriors needed because as the game went on, the three-point shot ended up evening. 15 of 32 in this one for the Warriors. The Rockets end up 15 of 45, and so the Rockets got as hot in that third quarter as the Warriors had been really throughout the first half, and it became an issue of how can the Warriors get buckets. And look, they got to the free throw line a ton. Jonathan Kuminga was getting to the free throw line all night. Wiggins got to the free throw line a lot. Wiggins and Kuminga, 10 free throw attempts each. Now they both only made 7. You want to make a better percentage of that, of those than they both did. But the Warriors needed those points when you look at the way the game evened out in some other areas and the way the Warriors were not scoring it at the efficient level that they were in the first half, and the fact that their defense really completely eroded. And the Warriors also were susceptible to some ball pressure, I thought, defensively, in not really having a true bona fide point guard available to them. In not having Stephen Curry and DeAnthony Melton's out. Not that he's a bona fide legit point guard, but I think Brandon Pajemski, as much as he loves running the one, he's not a true bona fide point guard. Draymond Green's not. Kyle Anderson got some minutes running the point. He's not either, although he does the best that he can in those situations. And I thought when the Rockets got the game to a point where they could really ramp up their ball pressure, the ball pressure was impacting the Warriors a lot in the second half. So Warriors were up 28 going to the third quarter, and then the Rockets got it going from 3. It was a 16-point game going to the fourth, 37-25 Rockets in the third quarter. And then it looked like the Warriors in the fourth quarter were going to have enough to hold on after the Rockets hit back-to-back threes to make it 96-86 with just under 11 minutes to go. Warriors were over-helping defensively. Rockets cut it down to 7 after another turnover. Jonathan Kuminga got subbed out of the game. That was his roughest stretch. He played great, I thought, in the first half, played great in the overtime, as we mentioned, but he struggled a little bit in that late third quarter, beginning of the fourth quarter stretch. Pajemski came in. Rockets run a 22-3 run to make it a 3-point game with 8:53 to go, and it was a rough defensive output and overall output for both Buddy Hield and Lindy Waters III, who had been revelations for the Warriors in these first couple of games. And the Warriors still needed Buddy Hield scoring, but the second half really looked as bad as the first half looked good. Rockets started the fourth on a 13-0 run. Again, we talked about the 3-point game at 96-93. The Warriors just trying to barely keep the Rockets at arm's length. Draymond hit a big 3 to put them up. Looked like Wiggins got banged up, had a little bit of a leg issue. Pods got the ball taken from him a couple of times, including once by Eason, who laid it in to give the Rockets the lead. It was tied at 104. It was tied at 106. But the Warriors got some big buckets down the stretch in regulation from Brandon Pajemski and Buddy Hield. And the Warriors were up 114-110 with 147 to go. Pajemski put them up 6 in the final minute plus at 118-112. But Draymond Green missed a couple of free throws. Warriors even got the rebound up 5, but the Rockets able to get the ball back, hit a 3, and then Draymond, what the heck are you doing? I mean, Draymond with a brutal close to regulation, bad pass turnover, then a foul, as Eason goes to the line in the closing seconds to tie the game at 119. Warriors were up 119 to 114, basically with 20 seconds left. And the Rockets end up hitting a three, getting a steal, getting to the free throw line. Eason tied the game, and the 31-point lead, which had already been blown and the Warriors had reestablished a 6-point lead, was completely gone. And the game goes into overtime, tied at 119. We talked about Kuminga. Kuminga, the first 2 buckets for the Dubs, surrounded by a stop. Kyle Anderson as well with a key bucket, and Kuminga ultimately puts this thing away. 6 of the 8 points for the Warriors in the overtime to Jonathan Kuminga, who wanted the ball in that moment and kept taking it to the cup. That's 3 straight positive outputs from Jonathan Kuminga, who, by the way, was a team leading plus 18, and 6 of that in that overtime session where he scored 6 of the Warriors' 8 points. So I would give, in a lot of ways, the game ball to Jonathan Kuminga for preventing what would have been a catastrophe. Greg Silver, if we're talking about the Warriors blowing a 31-point lead against a team they hadn't lost to in nearly 5 years on the calendar. I know the Rockets are improved, but they were not ready to play at the beginning of this one. The Warriors were. I know Steph Curry was out, but I just can't say enough how important it is for the Dubs to be able to finish this thing off victorious and really wash themselves off of some of the net. It's easier to learn from the things that don't go well when you're able to walk out of that building victorious. It becomes teachable moments as opposed to moments that weigh for the next 48 hours until they have the opportunity to tee it up again in DC. So
JD.
big win. Outcome matters, and the Warriors get the dub tonight.
You know what I was honestly thinking about in not blowing that game, or as it was starting to happen? This is how dark my mind can be sometimes with sports. I thought about how the Warriors owned the Kings in this era, right? They beat them in the 7-game series. They lit the beam on their home floor. Steph Curry had 50, blah, blah, blah. Then they had the Clay game winner early last season. And then they had the really bad collapse with the 24-point lead late in the second quarter, the in-season tournament game. They lost it. The Warriors have not beaten the Sacramento Kings since. The Houston Rockets haven't beaten the Warriors since pre-COVID. And my mind went to, do we have another one of these on our hands?
Yeah, no, well said, I think. But no, the answer no, with the Warriors able to escape. So 808 KNBR, let's get to the phones here. It is Dubs OT with JD here on a Saturday night on the Sports Leader, and the Warriors are 5-1 for a second consecutive year, and they got a shot to be 6-1 as they'll take on the Wizards Monday in the nation's capital. Let's get to Ken in Portland, Oregon, who's our tip-off caller of the night here on Dubs OT. What's going on tonight, Ken?
Hey, JD. Hey, Greg. Thank you very much for taking my call. I appreciate it. Appreciate what you guys are doing here. I subscribed and I like you, and I'll check you out every game.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Ken. We love having you.
Yeah, it's great. It's great to get someone doing a podcast that's on the ground, doing beat reporting, bringing some insights. So you guys have a real quality product, and we just got to get the word out. I really appreciate it.
Amen to that, Ken. We're on the same page there, brother.
Not just secondhand speculation. So, although that's great too, when you don't have to manage your relationship.
Yeah, you got to do that. You can't do a show for as long as we do, Ken, without having some of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, it was a great game. Let's face it. It was a great game. And, winning on the road is not easy. And they went out and got it done against a team with some real talent. I was mentioning when I called in, to give you a football analogy, I remember the old Washington Redskins with John Riggins, and they'd get a lead, and he had like 40 or 50 yards rushing at the time they got a lead. And then they'd just hand him the ball like 20 more times behind the Hogs. And at the end of the game, he'd have 150 yards rushing, and they'd have won the game by 2 or 3 touchdowns. And they beat the Niners plenty of times during that stretch. To me, it's like the run game is what you use to grind down the clock and protect the lead. And where I'm going with that is our 3-point shooting is like the passing game, and Trace underneath, Kuminga driving, that's the run game. And if you look at the minutes of this game, Trace only played like 12 or 13 minutes the whole game. And he played 6 or so of them in the first quarter, and then he didn't go in the rest of the first half. Then he came in and played 6 minutes or so at the start of the second half, and he only ended up playing 12 minutes the whole game. And, you know, when you've got a 30-point lead and someone like Trace just gets a bucket, he's so efficient with the ball, gets a bucket, gets fouled, gets a bucket. Sure, they're not splashy 3-pointers, but those 2-pointers just keep running the clock. He scores, the defense goes back, set up. You know, he gets fouled, couple free throws, and before you know it, you're down 30 with 25 minutes to go. Now you're still down 30 with 15 minutes to go. And it's not necessarily like crazy or amazing. It's just, he just makes those efficient buckets. And when you're up by 30, there's nothing wrong with that. And I saw the team make this same mistake last year. You know, he gets it done. And I mean, I'm still grateful for like the character building and all that stuff of today's game, but I do think that's something that needs to be asked. You know what I mean? I'm not asking you to ask it, but maybe someone can ask it. I don't know.
Yeah, well, yeah, and it wouldn't be me tonight, not on hand in Houston personally for tonight's game, but yeah, I think it probably is a question that will be asked, and if it is, we'll make sure we attempt to pass the answer along to you. I think it's one of those games, Ken, where the Rockets make an attempt to go a little bit smaller as they were getting back in the game, being down so much, and basically Trace Jackson Davis played the first 6-7 minutes of the first half and the first 6-7 minutes of the second half. And then that was basically, that was it for the entire game. And they were playing Tari Eason a lot, basically as almost as their center. They really went small as the game went on. Sengun only ended up playing 21 minutes, and you know they were rolling with other guys. Jabari Smith played 37. Jabari Smith Jr. played 37, and so I think at times you want to have a little bit more of a fully switchable wing and guard oriented offense. And I think at times it also can be, hey, you're having success with the way you're playing when TJD is not in the game. And then it kind of, the game will snowball on you a little bit. Not that he didn't play well, because he did play well in his time, +7 in his 13 minutes. And you mentioned the 3 for 3, and you know he had assists and boards. I mean, he was a big part of the beginning of the game, especially
out on defense too.
Yep, and stout on defense, and they love Draymond and TJD together. They really believe that makes them a much more formidable defensive team collectively, and Draymond, it allows him to be much more dominant and not have to constantly be protecting the paint or working against another team's big. But I think what happens when you have the big lead and you're kind of on cruise control is you just roll with a lot of the wings and guards that are playing well, and then when the game gets tight, you start to say, okay, who are my best 5 right now to bring this thing home? And because TJD hasn't played in so long, and look, this is not a defense of it, but I'm trying to get in Steve Kerr's head a little bit. I think you just roll with, well, Wiggins has got to be out there, and Draymond has got to be out there, and you need a ball handler in Pajemski, so he's got to be out there, and you want to have Kuminga out there. And then Buddy Hield is your 3-point threat, so you want to have him out there. And then there's 5 guys that are out there on the court, and it's like, well, how do you play Trace Jackson Davis, who hasn't played in almost a quarter and a half, even though the game's getting away? So not an excuse, and I think still a fair question to ask. But I think that's part of, Ken, where maybe Steve Kerr was going with the thing, as the lead started to just quickly evaporate on him.
I think you're right. And I mean, I love the vibes of the team this year. It's really exciting. But the fact of the matter is, outside shooting is high variance. And, you know, you can go on the road and be up by 30, but that doesn't mean that low variance, you know, ground game doesn't still have a role in these games. You know, I mean, they can ice these games. There's more than one way to ice these games. And, hey, I appreciate you guys taking my call, and I'm super excited about this season. Lots more to talk about at other times, but thank you very much. Have a great night.
Yeah, thanks, Ken. I mean, how can you not be excited? It's 5-1 for the second straight year, but I think this is a better 5-1 because 3 of the 5 are without Stephen Curry. And again, I know tonight could have been a loss, but it wasn't. And that, I think, in some ways is the difference between last year's team and this year's team. I mean, you're already a +1 in a game that you probably would have let get away 5 different times a year ago. So impressive win, nevertheless, even though it wasn't perfect. But we're here to discuss it on Dubs OT with JD here on KNBR, the sports leader. And we're going to keep things rolling on the phone lines at 808 KNBR. And let's go to Bob in Saratoga next as the lines continue to light up here on a Saturday night. Bob, you are on the sports leader with JD on Dubs OT. Hey, Bob.
Well, hey, I think we all have to really be so grateful to have a great coaching staff, especially the new defensive coach. And Kerr's got to be the best coach in the NBA for a long time. Second thing is Kuminga, if he can continue to do what he did, should get a contract soon because he's really starting to mature and do what they're expecting him to do before they give him all the money. So I think we got a great thing together here. But the biggest thing they got to do for the rest of the year is practice their freaking foul shots. They can't lose or miss that many foul shots and win games, okay? So that's it for me. I'm very happy.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I mean, yeah, and they do work on their foul shots. Thank you for the call. We can let our man go here, Bob in Saratoga, because his call's over. Thanks, Bob. Appreciate it. All right. Thanks, Greg. We can let Bob go. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks, buddy. I know we got a lot going on back in studio, but no, look, they're always working on free throws. They're always working on free throws. And, Jonathan Kuminga has kind of been an up and down free throw shooter throughout his career, as has Andrew Wiggins. He's always been kind of around that high 60s to 70% in a lot of years. Draymond missed 4 tonight. Moses Moody missed a couple early. You're like, what is going on here? Pajemski missed a couple. I mean, those are the ones. Like, nobody's surprised, Greg, when Kevon Looney misses 3 or Kuminga misses 3 out of 10 or Wiggins misses 3 out of 10 or Draymond goes 5 for 9, but Moody 3 for 5, Pajemski 2 for 4, Buddy Hield missed 1. Like, those are the handful that if you make, you probably still are able to win this thing on a little bit of cruise control.
Yeah, and it's hard when you time. I mean, 18's a long way to go for an entirety of a game, but it felt like a lot of those misses came when the Rockets were inching their way back against the Warriors. And it was like, okay, it went down from 30 to 16. So not a huge deal yet. But then anytime the Warriors had a chance to give themselves a little cushioning, it was like, they only got 1 or they didn't get any, or Moses Moody got fouled and missed 2 of the 3 free throws. And not to single out Moody or anything, but that was just one example that stuck out to me when I'm kind of playing this all back in my head. 50 is a lot of free throws. That's why I made the Lakers joke a little bit earlier. But when you miss 18, I mean, there were plenty of opportunities to shut the door. And we had a good comment here in our chat that I think I set aside. If I can find it. Yeah, Regulator early in the show. Dubs tried to give that away, but the Rockets said, no, you can have it. I don't think the Rockets necessarily choked, but they certainly left the door open enough for the Warriors to get it together.
You can't choke a game where you're down 31. Now, you can choke a game where you're up 31 and up 5 with 20 seconds left. You can do that, as the Warriors almost did. But I am not. And look, maybe you disagree with me, but I don't think you can choke a game where you were down 31, even though the Warriors gave them plenty of opportunities that the Rockets pretty much couldn't cash in down the stretch. Erwin Kwong, we all saw the full Buddy Hield experience and the full Jonathan Kuminga experience. That's true. Kuminga was still mostly good tonight. I thought he was really good in the first half. He was really good in the overtime. Like I said, he didn't have a great 5 to 7 minute stretch into the third quarter, beginning of the fourth quarter as the Rockets were coming back. Kerr got him out. But you know what? Kerr wasn't afraid to put him back in the game when Draymond Green fouled out and the Warriors were going to need scoring in the overtime. So I think, again, the Warriors don't win this game without Kuminga, who had 23 on 7 of 12, got to the line, made 2 of 3 from 3, as much as I've been one to say, hey, ditch that shot. I think that 2 to 3 attempts a game, if they're leaving you open, I'm fine with that. If he makes 1 or 2 of 3, that's great. But then you look at the rest of it, 6 of 9 from 2, and a lot of it in the paint, in addition to the free throws. That's closer to the quintessential Jonathan Kuminga game, where it's downhill, it's off the gravity of everything else the Warriors are trying to do offensively, and he's just taking dudes down on the block and getting them to the bucket and forcing them to foul, or he's laying it up, or he's hitting little shorties from inside of 10 feet. That is the Jonathan Kuminga game that you want if he's going to be a big time force. And he was tonight. He was the number 2 scorer. Now, they still needed another 27 and 6 of 10 from 3 from Buddy Hield, but the Warriors were able to get it. And it all counts toward this Warriors victory. Rebel to Sounds in the YouTube chat before we get back to the calls. A couple of quick ones in the YouTube chat. Rebel to Sounds. Warriors defense in the first half was good. Second half, they took their foot off the gas. Agree with that wholeheartedly. I think that's spot on. I thought their defense was excellent in the first half. Second half, yes, took their foot off the gas, went cold from 3, turned it over and stagnated a little bit offensively, but then able to do enough to win the game. But yeah, you don't get up 31 if your defense isn't good in the first half. And I thought their defense was great in the first half. Robert, Warriors definitely didn't deserve to win the game, but you'll take it. I disagree. Warriors did deserve to win the game. You get up 31, you keep the game tied into overtime, and then you out-execute your opponent in the OT. Claim that one, Robert. The Warriors deserve to win that game. Now, if they had lost, they would have deserved to lose the game. I'm not going to it does definitely work both ways as far as that's concerned. But no Warrior fan should be feeling shame for winning that game as well as they played for a good chunk of it. 808 KNBR. Let's go to Drew Down in Tracy next here on Esports Leader. Hey, Drew Down.
Hey, what's going on, JD? What's going on, Greg? Yeah, man, I just got out the shower because I felt so dirty after the Warriors barely pulling out that game. But one stat that stood out to me is the Warriors had 20 assists in the first half. They finished the game with 26.
Yep.
That's very uncharacteristic of this team. And obviously the 18 missed free throws. I was yelling up a storm in the house. My wife probably wants to choke me out, but that was just frustrating. Draymond and Paz were 1 of 4, to close the game in that stretch after I think Wiggins tipped it out. And I think in many ways that third quarter, obviously they didn't lose, but they have the Rockets in foul trouble early. And it's like, get to the line. Obviously tonight wasn't great, but I thought that, maybe the 3-pointer wasn't there, but it's like, go to the hole, man, get to the line. They're in foul trouble. And then what was even the most frustrating thing for me was the defense over-helping and leaving shooters open from 3, especially when you're up that big. The only way that the Rockets are going to get back in the game is from the 3-point line, and they continue to overhelp, and just leave guys wide open from 3. So that was incredibly frustrating. But, yeah, and they had 14 turnovers. Rockets scored 18 points. I thought that was a big factor. But Kuminga, man, his scoring in overtime was big time. I know he had a couple of ill-advised turnovers, but I thought Kuminga was good, man. 7 of 12 for 23 points, team high plus 18. I thought he took 1 bad 3, but the other 2 I thought were good shots. So, I thought Kuminga played a good game. He definitely saved the bacon in overtime. And then Buddy Hield, man, a lot of big shots. I know he had some bad decisions. I know he fell down at the end of regulation, but at the end of the day, he had 27 on 14 shots. Right. So, I mean, he did his job off the bench, and it's Buddy Hield, right? So unfortunately, you're going to have to live with some of the mistakes, but regardless, he made 27 on 14. I mean, it's kind of hard to, you don't win without him. You don't 100%, JD.
Look, Buddy Hield and Kuminga weren't perfect. I thought Kuminga, for the most part, played well. Other than I thought 21 of Kuminga's 26 minutes, he played really well in this game. But you know what? You take that. You don't win the game if he isn't able to gather himself in OT and get 6 of the 8 points. And you know what? Buddy Hield's not a perfect player. We know it. but he made 6 of 10 from 3 and scored 27 points. You don't win the game without Buddy Hield either. So you got to take the good with the bad, and tonight the good outweighed the bad over 53 minutes, Drew Down.
No, 100%. And at that point, you're nitpicking. Nobody's perfect. There wasn't a perfect game, but if you're getting 23 on 12 shots, 27 on 14 shots, I mean, off the bench, like, come on, man. What are we doing here? I thought Looney was big, man. He made a lot of good defensive plays, just putting his long arms up, his 7'3" wingspan, whatever it is, 7 points, 7 boards, 2 assists, a block, a steal, plus 12. I thought Loon was a steady vet off the bench. And, hey, it wasn't pretty, but in this 5-game road trip where you got Boston, you got Cleveland, you got OKC coming up, I thought this was a must-win game. That sounds silly, but I thought it was a game they had to have. And at the end of the day, they got the job done. So they got the dub, and let's move on, and let's beat Washington, man.
Yeah, on to Washington, and that's another winnable game, and it sounds like there's a pretty good chance that Steph Curry is going to be able to come back and play in Washington. And if you can bank that win and get to 6-1 and 4-0 on the road before you go to Boston, Cleveland, and Oklahoma City, the true test of this road trip, then you're in great shape. And you know what? Even if you come up short in some of those games, or all 3 of them, frankly, as long as you're able to beat Washington to get to 6-1, I think you're feeling really good about the overall trajectory of this season in what would be 10 games in as you lead into Klay Thompson's return and the Warriors taking on the Dallas Mavericks 10 nights from tonight over at Chase Center. 808 KNBR, 415-808-5627. That is the number to give us a call or shoot us a text here on the Sports Leader. It's Dubs OT with JD. We do have a couple of lines open here as well. And looks like we had Danny in Vancouver, but looks like we lost Danny in Vancouver. Danny, if you're still around, give us a call back. We'll get you to the front of the line. But let's jump in with Johnny in Kentucky next here on Dubs OT on KNBR. What's going on tonight, Johnny?
We just lost Johnny as you said his name. I hope he calls back. Johnny, if you're listening, give us a call back.
Johnny, and our buddy Danny in Vancouver. They were having a little issue with the phone lines here. 808 KNBR 415-808-5627. Robert, first half couldn't have played better. Second half probably couldn't have played worse. San Jose Jazz fan in the YouTube chat. Kaminga saving that OT. AJ Cruz 75, super reporter time. Hell yeah, baby. Paranoid Android 5-1, baby. Rebel to Sounds. What's up, JD and Greg in the chat? That's right. Just start having at it in the chat. Appreciate Regulator and Alpha. We'll get more into the chat here coming up. But let's go ahead and pause here and take our first time out. About 40 minutes commercial free here on a Saturday night on Dubs OT. You know how we roll. One thing I'll say about Drew Down talking about getting to the free throw line, Greg. They had 50 free throw attempts. That's unfreaking heard of. 50 free throw attempts. Now, you got to make more than 32, but 50?
I was going to say, what's just as crazy is they needed all of them.
They did. Well, they did need all of them. They needed all 32 of their makes, and maybe they would have been up by more if they had made a few earlier in the game. But I think you have to give the Rockets credit for sticking with it and attempting to come back, but you definitely give the Warriors credit for the great first half that they played, and they held their mud. They almost didn't, and they're turning it over, and Buddy Hield's falling down, and Draymond's doing stupid stuff and fouling guys to put the tying points on the line after a turnover, and Pajemski's getting the ball taken from him a couple of times there, running the point, struggling with the ball pressure. But you know what? They did enough to get the game into an extra 5 minutes, and they executed enough defensively. Rockets 1 of 12 in the OT. Some of that maybe Houston was tired. A lot of that, though, I think you got to give credit to the Golden State Warriors and the job that they did defensively, which for the first half plus the overtime was excellent. All right, let's go ahead and pause here. 808 KNBR, 415-808-5627. It is Dubs OT with JD here on a Saturday night on the Sports Leader.
And it's just exhausting.
Hoops Heads, Dubs OT with John Dickinson keeps ballin'. Streaming live at twitch.tv/thesportsleader.
So Draymond is the inbounder. Oh no! He threw it over Wiggins. The Rockets have an opportunity. Aaron Holiday the skip pass. Tari Eason is fouled. And you're gonna shoot. You're gonna have free throws to tie the game. You know what? Draymond's fouled out of the game. That's rough.
Yeah, that's as rough as it gets. You throw the ball away up 2 in the closing seconds after the Rockets hit a 3. You then commit a shooting foul down 2 to put the player at the line to try and tie the game with a couple of free throws. And you foul out when you're Draymond Green, with the game likely at that point to go into overtime. Draymond really hitting the trifecta there in terms of not a winning play, as the Warriors looked like they were going to escape in regulation after letting the 31-point lead get away to where they were down 1, then up by 5. And those 2 free throws wound up tying the game at 119 and sending it into overtime. Warriors, though, win 127-121, 8-2 Dubs in the OT, and they get the win as we welcome you back here to Dubs OT, appropriately named here on this Saturday night here on KNBR. It's John Dickinson and Greg Silver with you as we continue to react to this thriller. 808 KNBR, the number to jump in on the Golden State Lumber and Building Materials text line or on the phone lines. More from the YouTube chat momentarily, but let's get back to our buddy Johnny in Kentucky next here on the Sports Leader. Johnny, appreciate you calling back. All the kids are put to bed for the evening, and thanks for chiming in.
I appreciate you taking the call, JD. Long-time listener, first-time caller. And I really, I respect your opinion on the Warriors. Obviously, you've been following them for a while. And I don't know, I think they're good right now, but, do you see any trades in the future, like what we might be able to do? I know that's a little bit further down the road, but right now I'm like, I don't know if this is a NBA Finals contender right now.
Yeah, I don't think they are, Johnny. I think right now their goal is, at least with the way this team was put together, was to be a really good regular season team and see how far that can take them, while also being, as Mike Dunleavy said in the season opening press conference back before training camp started and the team went to Hawaii, that they're impatient, meaning that they like the team they put together, but they want to make a move, for a big move. So I think they're trying to see how good this team can be and which pieces fit together and become essential to it functioning and hopefully winning a lot of regular season games, because I think this team can do that. I wouldn't have bet on it before training camp, but watching October play out, I really liked the fit and the combination of players and some of the objectives in terms of the way they tried to build it for the regular season, with defense and ball movement and a bunch of guys who really like each other and play for each other. So far, so good on that front. All that being said, though, Johnny, I don't think this is a championship contending team as they're currently constituted, but I think that's okay, because I don't think that was the primary goal when you look at the things that they tried to do in the offseason, getting Paul George, getting Lauri Markkanen, interest in Jimmy Butler, all those different things. But as you mentioned, it is only November 2nd, and I think the best thing that this team can do is continue to rattle off as many wins as they can while analyzing and evaluating the guys who are the most important to it and who potentially could be moved in a trade if a true bona fide number 2 second star type player comes available for the Warriors that would put Steph and that player plus the remaining players who would still be around in a position to where maybe that group could contend for a title. So yeah, it is a little premature, but I don't disagree with you by any stretch, Johnny, but I also think for the time being, maybe not for the entire year, but for the time being, I think the Warriors are comfortable but impatient as to the fact that they have a really good but maybe not championship great team assembled.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. I like the salary cap right now. Like, there's not too many players that we're paying too much. And I feel like, I don't know, I might be completely wrong, but like there's plenty of players on the team right now that we got that are like 10 million, 12 million that we could possibly trade to get a potential, second star on the team. And I was just curious what your thoughts are. I know you've been following them for a while, and I just respect your opinion on that. And just thought like what your thoughts are on maybe a trade down the line.
Well, the names aren't going away, and the names within the last couple of days. I mean, they went from Wednesday to tonight without playing a game, and there was reporting on Giannis as the Bucks are in shambles at 1-4 to begin the season. And then and obviously the whole league would be interested in Giannis, as Oklahoma City and the Knicks and the Nets, and really anybody would be, the Warriors for sure. And then Jimmy Butler was the other name via Anthony Slater and Sam Amick. And
that's what I was thinking too. Yep.
At the Athletic, and also the willingness to more than ever, and the exact quote was more willing than ever from their story, to include Kuminga potentially in a deal, which they've been reluctant to do previously. And look, Kuminga really helped them tonight, played well in the first half, played well in the overtime. They don't win tonight without him. But I think he's the one player among the 13, as much as he was needed tonight. I think as this thing develops, it's worth monitoring if he becomes the one player that they would be willing to part with, because they'd have to pay him if he sticks around, and maybe could be valuable to a team looking to go in a little bit of a different direction in terms of trying to get younger and maybe either a soft or a hard rebuild. So I think that's something worth monitoring as other teams perform or don't, and some of these other players with contract situations that maybe they're not happy with, or team situations that maybe they're not happy with, start to become a little bit more disgruntled and maybe lead down the path of becoming more available.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, right now I think we're playing really well. I just think that we need potentially a second player to help out Steph. I appreciate the call, JD. Love it. Keep it going, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Johnny. Appreciate you, man. 808 KNBR 415 808-5627. Excellent phone call from Johnny out in Kentucky here tonight on a Saturday as the Warriors get the victory. It is Dubs OT with JD. 127-121 in overtime. Warriors survive. They get outscored in the fourth quarter 39-23. Woo! After getting outscored 37-25 in quarter number 3. And then they win it in the OT 8-2, 127-121. Jonathan Kuminga. It feels a little sacrilegious right now, Greg, talking about trading Jonathan Kuminga when he was so huge for the Warriors all night, really. Plus 18. We talked about the one small stretch where he struggled a little bit in the second half, but he was excellent and needed in the OT, and really had a great night overall, getting the ball to the bucket and knocked down a couple of threes, and even had 6 boards.
Dude, it was a big boy game for Jonathan Kuminga. What can I say? I mean, it's kind of what I was getting at when I gave my little sermon at the top of the show with, I think this was a good thing when you consider how clutch Podziemski and Kuminga in particular were, when they're going to have to sooner or later be part of finding ways to win games. And yeah, in a perfect world, you got the greatest free throw shooter of all time to go up to the stripe and ice the game in a game like that. But tonight you didn't. And Wiggins, who started off great and looked like he didn't miss a beat, looked a little bit banged up. And all of a sudden he wasn't, your guy. I thought he was aggressive and did a nice job getting to the line. But then that charity stripe becomes a whole different discussion with the misses. So seriously, a collective team effort. I like Drew Down's point about Kevon Looney, because I thought he actually did a really good job defensively when the Rockets had chances to go and take leads and really put their foot on the Warriors' throat there late in regulation. I thought Looney was big in that. And then we're going to hear from Steve Kerr coming up in Sounds of Silver about his selection for the starting lineup that was out there in overtime. But Kyle Anderson, got to give the guy credit for coming in semi-cold and delivering in a big stretch of moments there. I thought he had a really terrific overtime as well.
Yeah, Kyle Anderson defensively, I thought was really good throughout the entirety of the night, and the Warriors needed him to be. And yeah, you got to have finishing play. When you have a couple of guys foul out, as the Warriors did with Podziemski, I mean, Anderson was the guy who came in for Podziemski and basically was the point guard, the point forward down the stretch, but they were getting the ball to Kuminga and kind of letting him go to work in the overtime. And of course, Kuminga was the guy who came into the game for Draymond. If Draymond doesn't foul out, maybe the Warriors don't go to Kuminga in the overtime. Again, it's hindsight being 2020, and they probably would have needed him to be out there anyway. But without Podziemski and without Draymond, it led to Kuminga and Anderson getting opportunities, and Kuminga and Anderson both made the most of those opportunities in a big time way. 808 KNBR 415-808-5627. Let's go ahead and pause here again, and we'll come back. We'll get to Sounds of Silver. We also have fun with numbers coming up, but we still can get to some more of your reaction on the phone lines. Been a lot of really good calls tonight on the Golden State Lumber and Building Materials text line. And yes, back to the YouTube chat as the Warriors get the win again on the road, 3-0 to begin the year, 5-1 overall. It is KNBR 104.5 and 680, the sports leader.
Did you hear something?
Yeah, like a swoosh.
Yeah.
Dubs OT presents the sounds of silver. Streaming live on YouTube at KNBR 104.5.
All right, welcome back. Dubs OT with JD here on the Sports Leader. It's the best Dubs coverage in the Bay. Warriors win in overtime, 127-121 over the Rockets. 808 KNBR 415-808-5627. Sounds of Silver coming up here in just a second. But first, we do want to dive back into the YouTube chat. Alpha chiming in early as we hit the airwaves here just over an hour ago. Alpha, what's up, JD and Greg? That was a great win, considering the blown lead. Last year's team would have lost this game. Great resilience overall. I could not agree more. Again, the result matters. We can nitpick how they got to the result, but look, this team on this night was good enough for a huge chunk of the game to be up 31 in the second half. That is not nothing and should not be completely thrown away because they blew a 5-point lead in the final 20 seconds. If you win. Now, if you lose, then burn it all down at that point. Right? And in terms of the night, I'm speaking figuratively. If you lose the game, then forget about being up 31. You don't get any credit for being up 31. I don't play that game. But when you win, this is a results-oriented business. And when you win games like this, and look, I think this team, Greg, and you can correct me if you disagree on this, I think this team, especially without Steph, but I think this team as it has been built is, in some ways, they're not a team trying to go from bad to good, because they were a good team last year and they were a good team 2 years ago. Sometimes it does get miscast like they were not good teams the last 2 years. 44 wins, 46 wins. But I think this group's learning how to win still together. I think every year it's a little bit different. I mean, this is 2 future Hall of Famers now, when the Warriors at times had 4 or 5 future Hall of Famers over the last decade on the court at the same time. So a lot of young players, from Pods to Kuminga to TJD, in addition to obviously Draymond and some of the veteran players even trying to learn how to win games with this group. So I think anytime you can win a game like this, it's a hell of a lot better than the alternative. You can nitpick the things that you didn't do well, but you want to be able to do it in a win, because then you can correct it. Hi, Greg. And then be able to move on to the next one. And hopefully when you're in those positions again, you're able to close it out without having it get as dicey as it did get tonight.
I mean, you and everyone else who's been with us on the early part of the season knows that one of my big things has been the how of them winning and losing games, and the one game they did lose. And I think the how absolutely counts tonight, and it counts both ways. The how of losing a 31-point lead, going stiff offensively, not making free throws. It hit a point where even with Buddy Hield out there, it felt like nobody wanted to shoot. And then Pajemski and Kuminga and Hield to some degree all decided to, step up and get some shots in. The bad of it absolutely counts in the how, but so does the good. And it's learning how to win, how to overcome adversity, how to get by when things are not in your favor and you don't have your best player and your second best player fouls out of the game. It all counts for something, and 5-1 is what they are right now, and they do capitalize on the first game of that road trip. Now, it wasn't pretty. I give the Rockets a lot of credit. I actually said there in the first half that I expected them to be a top 10 defensive team this year, and the Warriors came out without their offensive engine, who spaces the floor to a degree that nobody in the NBA has ever done, and they were picking them apart for a whole 2 quarters, and it looked so ugly. So I give the Rockets credit. They're a young team. They're scrappy, and I would expect them to fight back in the way that they did. But good on the Warriors for not panicking for the most part. I mean, I don't think they executed great with some of the turnovers and missed free throws, but I didn't see too much panic or just boneheaded plays outside of, of all people, Draymond Green with that turnover that essentially took it to overtime.
Yeah, that was about the one thing that you can't do in that situation when Draymond did. Really 2 things that you can't do, the turnover and then the foul. But I would agree with the rest of it. OPG, I think, brings up a fair point. The Warriors' offensive scheme only works with pace, and if slowed down will result in turnovers due to late passing. They have to identify how to play at a slower pace differently. I think that's fair. I think that's a fair critique. I do think the Warriors offense can work in the half court, but it does depend on the complement of five that are out there in a given night. And I think we've seen that this team, at least so far, has not played a lot of close games. So we really don't know who the finishing group is going to be. And tonight you didn't have Steph, and you had a couple of guys foul out who were in the initial group, and then other guys stepped in. So I think tonight's a bad example maybe of the finishing lineup in the half court, and it got down to just get the ball to Kuminga, and Kuminga go get the ball in the OT, and he came through for him. But I think, Opie, to your point, in the second half, when you do have a big lead and you want to play slower, you do have to be able to execute in the half court. And I think when the three-point shot isn't falling, and then you start turning it over, and then there's a little bit more ball pressure from defenders. The Rockets really ramped up the ball pressure, and the Warriors had trouble with that ball pressure, which is something that will go on a scouting report moving forward for other teams. I think it does come into play here. A couple of people, including Christopher Nolan, we got lucky tonight. 18 free throws missed. Ebe here also at the 18 free throws missed nod, but you made 32, and the 64% is not what you want. And Christopher, I'm with you, but you still made 32. But 18's a lot. And some of the guys, as we talked about earlier, that missed them are guys that you need to hit a little bit higher of a percentage with, Pajemski and Buddy Hield missed one and that kind of a thing. AJ Cruz 75, Kuminga gets a game ball. Rebel to Sounds, Kuminga, game ball. Yeah, he saved him. Regulator, Kuminga for sure. Pods was hooping too. Almost closed it out in regulation. Erwin Kwong saying, hey, I would have subbed Buddy out when he was getting roasted by Thompson. Yeah, Buddy Hield and Lindy Waters were both getting cooked in the second half. And so, yeah, it was kind of ugly. Rebel to Sounds, Warriors probably thought the Rockets would have laid down when they had that 30-point lead. Possible. They definitely let their foot off the gas. I don't think there's much doubt about that. And especially with the Warriors winning 13 straight head-to-head against the Rockets. Again, not all of those head-to-head matchups are certainly with these same players. But I think maybe they definitely let up, considering how dominant they were over the course of a good chunk of the game. Jimmy says Kerr needs to play mismatches in games like these. Get JK on a smaller defender. He'll automatically draw double teams. Yeah, I don't know if they really want to run the offense through Kuminga like that as a true featured playmaker in crunch time, but they did get the ball to him down the stretch, and he was able to take his man and get to the bucket and score. So, and yeah, OPG in response to that, yeah, Kuminga doesn't really command a double outside. Yeah, if he starts cooking on the inside, maybe teams would send a double because they don't think Kuminga can handle it in terms of the pass out. And I think Kuminga would probably have a difficult time handling it on the pass out as well. Ebe here, another win. Just keep winning one at a time. Totally agree. Absolutely. Rockin' New Era at a concert at the moment, but had to give love to JD and Greg Civil. You missed a good one tonight, Rockin' New Era. Yes, all love. All love there. No question about it. So yeah, 808 KNBR, 49ers Red Zone, all outcomes matter. That's right. And the Warriors have this one in the win column. We'd be having a completely different show, Greg, if the Warriors give up a 3 at the end of regulation after Draymond turns it over, or they get beat 8-2 in overtime, which we saw happen last year. In a couple of games that they blew late leads in.
Yeah, I don't want to spoil any fun with numbers, but their overtime track record in the recent years has been
not great. And yeah, worse than I would have imagined. But yeah, not great. The overtime track record overall, and the overtime track record more specifically on the road. So back to the phones we go. Let's get James in San Francisco next here on Dubs OT with JD here on the Sports Leader. Hey, James.
Hey, good evening. My question is, like, everyone's talking about Shanahan in the Niners not being able to manage leads, not being able to do proper calls at the end of the game. How would you assess like a 31-point lead, the coaching behind this? How do you explain losing a 31-point lead in basketball?
Yeah, it happens a lot more than it used to happen because of the 3-point shot. And you saw the Warriors, as hot as they were in the first half tonight, be able to get out to that lead because they were making everything from 3, and the Rockets were ice cold from 3. And then the first thing that happened is that kind of flipped in the second half. So it creates these big runs that occur both ways. I think that's part of it. But I also think the Warriors let up in the second half, which is something that can't happen. I think they opened the door, and then the Rockets got their game going a little bit both ways, really ramped up their defense, and the Warriors kind of folded offensively in addition to playing some pretty sloppy defense, overhelping, allowing the Rockets to get good looks from 3, allowing the Rockets to get to the bucket off of their own bad shots or turnovers or more ineffective offense. So I think those were the highlights from it. And then again, when you blow the first lead and you've got a 5-point lead with a couple of minutes or 20 seconds to go, rather, heck, not even a couple of minutes, it becomes as simple as you got to make sure that you inbound the ball and you don't turn it over and you don't foul when you're up 2 and those kinds of things. So I think it was a lot that happened that put the Warriors in that position. But the first thing is, you can't let your foot off the gas when you build a big lead, because you know that a big lead in the NBA is not what it used to be because teams are so dependent on the 3-point shot, and that can be so fleeting, really, from half to half, even in the same game. Thanks, James. Appreciate it. Good call. It was a good call. Good call. Fair question. Hope I gave a decent answer to it as well.
Hey, before we get to some sounds, I want to bring up one more chat because people are talking about Moody and TJD, and our guy John Jay has a question for you about Moody's lack of minutes in the second half and overtime.
Yeah, and we'll look at it. JD, you think Moody was benched in the second half and overtime, played well in the first half? Waters and GP2 did nothing in the second half. Yeah, I don't know that he was benched. Again, I think games where you have huge leads, and the Warriors went through. I mean, he started the third quarter, and then he came out and he never got, like, sometimes guys who start the third. We saw this with Trace Jackson Davis. You just when you start certain players and the bench guys are the guys on a lot of nights that are outperforming. And that's what happened in the first half. And look, everybody played well in the first quarter for the Warriors, but when your bench guys are your main scorers, I think it makes it difficult sometimes to continue to put guys who start back in the game. And I think we saw that with TJD and we saw that with Moody tonight. They both start the game and start each half, but then you're going to Kuminga, and then you're going to Buddy Hield, and then you're playing small, and then you want to have Draymond out there, and you're going to have Wiggins out there, and you got to have Pajemski out there. So I think at times it did get down to, and look, Lindy Waters played 17 minutes, Moody played 17 minutes. So it's not like one played, significantly more than the other. Peyton only played 11 minutes. So, and again, Moody played his first run basically in, he played he played 2 runs in the first half. He played the 1 run. He basically had 3 runs. He started, he came back into the second quarter and then started the third quarter. And then that was it once he had subbed out. But I think as the game starts to get away, you start to go with those guys that you think are going to be your guys to put the game away. And tonight for the Warriors, a couple of those guys were your bench guys, with Buddy having 27 and Kuminga having 23. And then again, Greg, I think it comes down to, if you want to play those guys, and even Kuminga got benched, I thought, for a little bit there after he had a rough start into the third quarter, beginning of the fourth quarter. But then it becomes, if Buddy and Kuminga are out there, well, then Pods and Draymond have to be out there, and you want Wiggins out there, and Kyle Anderson needed to be out there in certain scenarios. So I don't think it was anything, I don't think there was anything, weird going on with him getting benched. And I agree. I thought Moses Moody played pretty well. I just think it comes down to Would you rather have had Moody out there than Kuminga? Maybe when Kuminga wasn't playing well at the beginning of the fourth quarter, would you rather have Moody out there instead of Buddy Hield? Maybe when Buddy Hield's turning the ball over, as he did 3 times, but you still need somebody that can stretch the defense and create spacing. So I guess what I'm getting at, Greg, is these are the kinds of problems that a coach can have when you have a team full of similar players. There's always, in terms of talent level, there's always going to be the one guy where it's like, well, why didn't you play this guy over that guy? Because the truth is most nights there isn't much of a difference between this guy or that guy. So when you lose or things don't go well, it's kind of easy, and I would say at times lazy, to just say, well, how come this guy, not that guy? Like, you could almost do it every night because Kuminga really isn't different than Moody, who isn't really different from Hield, who isn't really different from Anderson in their own ways. Some nights you need Peyton. Is it Looney or TJD? You just have a lot of similar players on this Warriors roster. And we saw this last year. And we've seen this in the last couple of years where, again, this team's much deeper, Greg, than the last 2 years teams that the Warriors have had. But whenever the Warriors would lose a game like this, it would always turn into, well, why didn't you play this guy or that guy? Well, part of the reason why is because a lot of these guys are of a similar talent level. That's just reality.
Yeah, and I think there's some fair truth to what John Jay was getting at, too, in that Lindy Waters definitely did not play as well as Moody. And to see them play the same amount of minutes and the box score at the end of the game, you kind of look at that and go, that's a little strange. But I also can understand it from if you're Steve and Jerry Stackhouse and Terry Stotts and you're trying to figure everything out. And you don't necessarily plan to blow a 31-point lead. So sometimes when it starts closing in on you, I think just in general, not just with this staff, but with the modern NBA, with how common comebacks are, I think coaches get caught a little bit more easily where a guy, maybe they planned to put back in the game or they thought the game was going to take us on a certain path. Then all of a sudden things change quickly and they got to adjust on the fly. And sometimes kind of in the frenzy of it all, you forget about 1 to 2 guys, especially when it's a lot of pretty solid role players, similar skill sets like you were getting at right there. I just think like Buddy Hield, you can kind of go to quickly in your head as, okay, we're going to put Buddy back in because he's the most prolific shooter on the floor, even if he, may or may not have been having a better game all around than somebody like a Moody.
Yeah, you always find your way needing a little of this and some of what that guy provides, and then it can end up maybe being a little bit uneven in terms of, God, you look up at it almost becomes easy at the end of the night to look back and go, why didn't this guy get more? Why didn't that guy get more? If you played this guy again, I don't think that's Moody's fault. I think it's unfortunate Moody seemingly finds himself in that position more than a lot of other Warrior players do throughout the years. But fortunately, the Warriors able to escape, and Kerr can kind of look at that more clear-headedly as you move on from Houston and head over to the nation's capital and look to take on the Wizards. All right, let's get to Sounds of Silver here tonight. And Greg's got a big old batch of sound tonight post game. A lot of Steve Kerr, a little bit of Draymond, and some Jonathan Kuminga as well, as he was the big overtime hero for the Dubs in this one.
Yeah, in a game like this, you're going to get a lot of worthy cuts of sound, and I think we're going to do our first ever split Sounds of Silver just because of the amount of cuts we have. So we'll probably play about half of it, take a break, play the other half, and then finish things off with a little fun with numbers and final thoughts. So let's start first with Steve Kerr. This is going to be him, just his breakdown of what he saw on the Draymond Green inbound turnover that was catastrophic and led to the overtime play.
Yeah, Brandon made some huge shots down the stretch of regulation. We should have put it away at that point. We had that weird advance with the timeout. We had, when we had a 3-point lead, 2-point lead, I guess. And we only had 4 seconds to get it across. So, we probably put Draymond in a tough spot, with that inbound pass. But I was so proud of the guys for the way they responded to what was an onslaught from Houston that second half and especially fourth quarter.
All right, so good stuff there. Your big takeaway from Steve Kerr on that front, Greg?
I think just the awareness and accountability of, we should have put the game away, and acknowledging some of the big plays they made down the stretch. And look, Steve's not going to be I'm going to throw Draymond Green under the bus kind of guy, because his defense was paramount to keeping the Warriors afloat when things were getting real bad. But I would just say that was kind of my big takeaway. Just the accountability of it was a bad play. I'm glad we don't have to dwell on it beyond this press conference. And there were a lot of clutch plays down the stretch too.
It's just so much easier when you win the game to be able to say something like that and move on to the next one and not have it. And here's the other part. That if the Warriors lose the game tonight the way they would have lost it, they could have lost that game by 30 and been terrible without Steph Curry, and the Rockets come out and they're on a heater and they blow them out and haven't beat them in almost 5 full years, February of 2020, all those things. Rockets could have done that tonight, and the Warriors could have very easily been like, yeah, well, whatever, didn't have it tonight. Still 4-2, no Steph. What can you say? Let's get them back on Monday and on to the next. You lose the game the way the Warriors would have lost that game, and it feels like it's an extension of last year. It immediately feels like, that 4-1 was cute, but this team's got a little something like last year's team did with the blown leads and the games they let get away, 5, 6, 7 of them at different points with leads. And now it extends into the next game or the next time you have a lead in a situation like that. So to nip that in the bud and wipe that completely away, I think for the trajectory of this season, I don't know if we're going to look back and remember it necessarily March 2nd when we're doing our eval of the year and where the Warriors are, but not having it be something that lingers here as the Warriors continue this road trip, I do think is definitely not nothing.
Yeah, like I said, it might not set the tone for the rest of the year, but it certainly avoids setting a terrible tone for the remainder of the season when you have something like that Game 6 happen to you. So they're able to survive, and they can just forget about it and get focused and hopefully get to 6-1 in Washington and start this road trip 2-0. But let's do another one from Steve Kerr here, because we had a lot of lineup discussion leading into the Sounds of Silver, and Steve elaborated on the 5 he chose for the start of overtime, and I think that's something everyone's going to want to hear.
I entered overtime just wanting to play great defense, so I put Loon and Kyle, and then we needed JK's ability to beat the switches and to get downhill, and he just took over. He was fantastic. I figured I was going to give Buddy a couple minutes. He had played probably 18 straight minutes, so we just thought let's try to get some stops to start overtime. That's why we had Wiggs, JK. We had a big athletic lineup out there, and that was the key, because they were we got probably 5 straight stops to start overtime, and then JK just took over at the other end.
Yeah, and the stops were as big as the buckets, and the 1 for 12 after the Rockets had really gotten into a flow. 76 second half points for the Rockets, 2 in overtime. The Warriors turned it off in the OT, 1 bucket on 12 attempts. And yeah, Jonathan Kuminga did his thing on the other end, and it all added up to a big win for the Dubs.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And we're going to hear from Jonathan Kuminga coming up probably on the second part of Sounds of Silver. But first, we're going to hear from his teammate, Draymond Green, talking about Kuminga and how impressed he was, because Draymond didn't get to play overtime with those 6 fouls. So here's what he had to say about the youngster.
He's very important. Number one, he can match the athleticism of all of those guys. A-Man, Tari, Jabbar, they are athletes. And A-Man's a freak. And Tari Easton got one of the best motors I've seen come through this league with skill. You've seen some guys come through here with like great motors and no skill. He got skill. He worked hard. But when you're facing guys like that, you need a JK, because not only could he go get his own, which he can. He showed down the stretch, or every time we needed a bucket, we gave him the ball, he went and got it. But like I said, from an athleticism standpoint, he's just as athletic, if not more. And so to match that physicality and athleticism was huge. And so, you know, that in situations like that, you know, you definitely need a JK.
Yeah, and the Warriors had that is the value. I think he is unique in terms of body type on this Warriors roster. And I couple what Draymond said there post game with what Steve Kerr said about wanting defense and having Kyle Anderson out there. You're definitely going to need some shooting with Anderson if you're going to put Anderson out there with Looney as they did. And so you put Anderson and Hield basically in your backcourt. You put Looney out there to stabilize your defense as a veteran presence. And then Wiggins is your best overall player basically among your veterans that are still available because you don't have Steph and you don't have Draymond and you need a two-way. And then Kuminga is the guy in terms of the body type and skill set and force. And I think, that's been the one thing, as clunky as it's been at times. And Kuminga was playing he basically, we don't need to get into the whole 3 versus 4 thing, but he basically exclusively played the 4 tonight. All of his minutes at the 4 tonight. Not surprising, but not really a point that I want to get into too much depth on tonight. But he is somebody that I think when he does play the 3, the part of the benefit of having him out there at the 3 is clunky and as a misfit as it can be at times is you still get that true NBA wing body type on the court. And that can in its own way create matchup issues for the opponent, even if the overall 5-person group on the court doesn't always, let's say, execute fluidly.
Yeah, no question about it. Let's hear one more, and then we'll do the rest on the other side.
Sure.
Steve Kerr wanted to talk about Jonathan Kuminga, and anytime these two talk about one another, it probably gets played on our show. This might be my favorite cut of the bunch, just in doing light previews of them all, because I think there's a lot to dissect here, and Kerr is highly complimentary of JK.
You know, he's this is the 3rd game in a row he's come off the bench, and these were his 3 best games. I think the way he's responded, to a role change is perfect. That's what we expect. You know, the professionalism, the force that he brought. Coming off the bench and playing the way he has, that's a huge sign of growth, and couldn't be more proud of JK.
Greg, I'm going to let you say to the air what you said in my ear, the big takeaway, because you were all over it here as Steve was talking.
So, yes, 3 best games of the year. Yes, very impressed with Jonathan Kuminga and how he's responded. But the expectation, that is what we expect on a team like this. I think there's been a little disconnect at times between those two particularly. That is not a problem at all in the early stages of the season when you look at the way Kuminga has impacted winning basketball, regardless of what that role has been or how it might look in a superficial on paper manner.
Well said. In fact, I cannot say that any better than you just did. And it's not about egos. It's not about being featured. It's not about being a starter. It's not about what position you're going to play or where your name is on the marquee. And it's always been true about Kuminga. It's always been, if Kuminga is going to become a star for the Warriors, which I think so many are just chomping at the bit to have him become, it's going to happen organically. And it's going to happen because he's putting in the work. And I don't mean that to say that he's not working behind the scenes. It's putting in the work when he gets in the game in the ways that impact winning. And it's not sulking about whether you're starting or coming off the bench. And it's being a productive player, even though you may be a little ticked off because you're coming off the bench these last 3 games. And JK's done that in all 3 instances. This isn't about value and accolades and money, and it isn't about any of that. That's all BS. This is about winning basketball, and it's about Jonathan Kuminga at still a very young age, learning how to contribute to that as he develops into whatever player he eventually becomes. The two have to be married hand in hand. And I think we're really in the third year of that. I don't want to say tough love, but kind of like to me, it still feels like a little bit of tough love from Steve Kerr to Jonathan Kuminga, even though Kuminga is somebody that he started at the 3 to begin the year and is playing a lot, even coming off the bench and is needed. It just still feels like there's this push-pull relationship between Steve and Kuminga that they're trying to work through on a nightly basis. Not cancerous or caustic or impacting anything negatively, but still very much there. And I think the Warriors are using it. I think in the early part of this year, and Steve Kerr, the way he's managed Kuminga, I think has been to get the best of all worlds, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, no, I couldn't have said that any better too. I think tough love sounds a little bit harsh just on the surface level, but I don't think there's any problem with tough love when you say you're also proud of him. And the big overarching theme is, but you win. Last year, the Warriors were not winning enough games they should have had for there to not be conflict and butting of the heads. Right now, in the very, very early stages of the season, they are winning games to where it's okay.
And the difference is it's tough love when you're still playing 26 minutes. It's tough love when you still started the first 3 games of the year at the 3. It's tough. It's not why is Kuminga not playing at all. It's not why did Kuminga get benched and not get another opportunity. Like I think there are times where, and we've addressed it on this show, that there are times where Steve, and there were a couple of instances last year where Steve probably went a little too far with it. Now, maybe that wasn't nearly as much as some in the fan base believed, but there were times where Kerr, I thought, did go a little too far. That, to me, it's within reason. It's now there are teachable moments, which is probably a better way of saying it, a less harsh way of saying it, but it's teachable moments in the context of you still have a regular nightly role on this team, whether it's in the starting lineup or whether it's coming off the bench. And that regular nightly role gave Steve Kerr the confidence that he could tap Kuminga on the shoulder in overtime and say, hey, you're going in the game, and Kuminga is able to help lead them to victory, which is what he did tonight. All right, we'll get to more Sounds of Silver coming up, but we are going to take a quick timeout. If you want to jump in and join the conversation, 808 KNBR, 415-808-5627. Warriors win in overtime after blowing a 31-point lead and a 5-point lead in the final 20 seconds. Which is worse? Kidding. That's a conversation we don't have to have because the Warriors did get the win. We've also got fun with numbers between now and 10 o'clock as we enter our final segment straight ahead right here on KNBR 104.5 and 680, the sports leader.
That's what we expect, the professionalism.
This is KNBR, and this is Dubs OT with John Dickinson, streaming live on YouTube at KNBR 1045.
All right, final segment. John Dickinson here, Dubs OT with JD 127, 121. It's the best Dubs coverage in the Bay. 808 KNBR if you want to jump in. We still got time to sneak in a call or two if you want here in the final segment as we keep this thing going until about 10 o'clock. Greg Silver, we are in the midst of Sounds of Silver. And let's go ahead and continue before we get with Fun with Numbers. We'll also look around the NBA a little bit at the first week and a half now. Some really good games. The Warriors, not the only Northern California team to play overtime tonight, although they had a different result up in Toronto. The Kings and Raptors going to OT. Kings nearly pulled a rabbit out of the hat after being down double digits in the fourth quarter. But the Raptors ultimately prevailed in DeMar DeRozan's Sacramento return to Toronto. I mean, he played in Toronto a lot with the Bulls, so it's not really a thing. But I guess Drake, I don't want to, I feel like we've been good at not getting off on tangents, but I was reading on social media that Drake, and I had the game on my second screen. I had the League Pass mix channel on, so I had a bunch of games on at once. I guess Drake was on the Raptors broadcast tonight and just annihilated DeRozan. Did you catch that?
Sorry, what was that? We're sorting out a couple of things on the phone line and studio matters.
Yeah, no, all good. I was just saying that I guess DeRozan went on the Raptors broadcast, and I don't have the context of this, but he went on the Raptors broadcast tonight and was like talking mess about DeRozan.
Oh, really? I did not see this. Yeah, everyone's asking me about that. I'm getting asked about Joel Embiid, and I'm like, look, I thought I had time in the fourth quarter to sort this out, and then Tari Eason made it so that I had to pay attention to the Warriors and worry about that first.
Yeah, no, and Embiid like shoved a reporter in the locker room tonight. I mean, it's been kind of a wild night, honestly.
Yeah, but I shove JD all the time, guys. What's the difference?
Yeah, it's not a big deal. Like we all like to shove each other. Like we all shove each other. So yeah, Embiid altercation with a reporter. Drake, this is from Worldwide Wob. So I'm reading his little recap of the night here and kind of stealing it. So Drake blasts DeRozan on broadcast. Donovan Mitchell game winner. Cavs are 7-0. Vince Carter had his jersey. I did see a little bit of that. Vince Carter had his jersey retired in Toronto tonight as well. And then the Rockets 31-point comeback to force overtime. And then he also added Grant Williams Celtics, as they played one of those back-to-backs in Charlotte where teams played 2 nights in a row, and the Celtics ended up winning both. But so, yeah, and I'm looking at Denver. Denver just thumped the Jazz, who still have not won yet, if I'm not mistaken. I'm going to bring up my standings here. Yeah, the Jazz have not won, now 0-6. And the Thunder and Clippers are in the fourth quarter right now with the Thunder holding an 11-point lead, and the Clippers have still not won at Intuit Dome. 0-3. They're 2-0 on the road. They're 0-3 at home, and they're down in the fourth quarter to the Thunder. So I guess we just went out of order there. We just did our little league recap, and now we'll get back into Sounds of Silver.
This is what happens when we do 2 shows in a day. When we get the double Saturday, when we get to the last segment of Dubs OT, it's a full grab bag, choose your own adventure kind of show.
Yeah, it's just chaos. The good news is last year it would have been like halfway through the first segment that we would have been doing this. And so we're just, again,
and the Warriors would have blown a 31-point lead.
I mean, this is an NBA show as much as it is a Dubs post-game show, Dubs OT. And there's a lot of NBA going on tonight. And so and this is the first one where I've been in the home studio for 2024-25. We're continuing to work on the background. Got some things coming. A couple of little adjustments to be made. We'll let those kind of speak for themselves here over the next few days on this road trip. But yeah, it was a busy night with a lot going on, and the Warriors were a big part of the chaos, Greg.
As they tend to do. Our Bay Area teams like a little bit of attention sometimes, not always for the best reasons, but the 2 that are in season right now, they want a lot of attention for better or worse.
what else do we have to wrap up Sounds of Silver? I know we got a couple of clips left, and then we'll do some fun with numbers. We'll call it a night. We'll let everybody enjoy their 49er bye week Sunday. Watch a lot of football tomorrow, and we will reconvene around 7 for Dubs OT after the Warriors take on the Wizards on Monday, and after Larry Krueger is done with Niners Nightly.
All right, 3 quick clips here. The first one is from Jonathan Kuminga, who would also get my ball, and I think is probably the majority favorite to get game balls based on the YouTube chat tonight. And he was asked about his mentality in overtime. I thought this was kind of funny and good for him.
It's mostly, like I said, so much space. Ain't nobody going to stop me where I want to go. It's not going to happen every time, but the mindset is just getting anybody whatever I want them to go, and more comfortable getting to the rim, than doing different things. Why settle when I could get to the rim? So that's the mentality.
Yeah, that's a pretty confident mentality. And I think he's right. When he gets going downhill, guys are not going to stop him. And if they do stop him a couple of times, they're not going to be able to stop him with enough regularity to. Ain't
nobody going to stop me.
I feel like there's a little smile there attached to that. So look, the one thing you cannot dislike about Jonathan Kuminga is his confidence. I think at times maybe his opinion versus his, the people close to him can get him in a little bit of trouble. But I think, confidence for as young as he is what allows you to do what he did in the overtime. And have the kind of games that we've seen him have. It's just a matter of harnessing that confidence and having the coaching staff be able to put him in positions to where he's playing downhill as much as possible in lineups where there's spacing, and he doesn't feel like he has to constantly be shooting threes, because he gets that little bit of a head of steam or a step on the defender, and it is over a lot of the times with Jonathan Kuminga. But that's we may need to add that little clip to our montage, Greg. I might have that might be a montage request.
My friends, I am one step ahead of you. Just wait for the final.
Yeah, I've only asked for 2 things: that and Robin in San Francisco being added to our Dubs OT intro, which she obviously has been, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, we got some good work going on behind the scenes. Shout out to guy Creative Tony for some of the assists too. Last 2 here. This one is Steve Kerr just taking accountability for himself and his staff, saying that they need to do much better job as coaches to avoid losing a 31-point lead.
Yeah, I mean, what's tough, obviously, without Steph, I mean, that's going to be, even tougher to play against switching without him. So, we've got to do a better job of, finding execution in those spots, knowing they're going to switch everything. Got to get the ball to our athletes who in positions to beat guys off the dribble, which is what JK did in the overtime. So as coaches, we have to do better. We've got to start looking at that. And but again, I'm really happy with the way the guys responded, and they got it done.
How about that? Where have I heard that before? At least part of that answer. My God. Steve Kerr listening to this show? Or am I just copying what Steve Kerr said? I think I kind of like the notion that maybe Steve Kerr's got an earbud in as he goes to the bus to head to the hotel or the airport. I think they're staying over and flying tomorrow and then going to practice. Well, I doubt they're going to actually practice in DC tomorrow. They were scheduled to have practice, but a lot of times, Greg, that gets canceled after a big win in overtime.
Well, I heard that Steve actually likes the new podcast cover art for Dubs OT, so he may be a fun with numbers, Sounds of Silver kind of guy when it comes down to it.
Yeah, no, I think that's without question. Do we have one more from Steve?
Yeah, last one. He just essentially says he's happy with the win, but also looking forward to running the tape.
To win after Draymond fouls out, to win without Steph, to win on a night when the game just completely flipped. As good as we were in the first half, they basically went small and switched everything and caused us a lot of problems. And so it's great to have that game on tape. It's great to feel it because we're going to have to get better when we face that kind of defense.
Yeah, and the going small and switching everything, that's a Ime Udoka signature that obviously was a Warrior signature back in the day, even back on those first title, the first title team and the team that won 73 games that ultimately lost to the Cavs. And Udoka did that a lot in his year with Boston before ultimately moving on to Houston. And that also explains a lot of why Trace Jackson Davis didn't get a lot of time after those initial runs in each half, because you do, when teams go small, need to often match up if you feel like you have the wing players to be able to do that. And that was, I think, what led, Wiggins and Kuminga, Podziemski to play. It doesn't totally explain Moses Moody and the lack of Moses Moody maybe getting another run there when things were going awry. And yeah, unfortunately, as we talked about earlier, too many times Moses Moody seems to be the one guy on the Warrior roster that always finds himself in that position. So great stuff from Greg on Fun with Number, or on Sounds of Silver, as we now transition into Fun with Numbers.
This is Dubs OT with JD. Time now for fun.
I'm a fun guy.
With numbers.
No, I'm just having fun.
On KNBR 104.5 and 680. Streaming live on KNBR.com and the KNBR app.
Yeah, what a win for the Warriors as they are 5-1. Second consecutive year they're 5-1. Does that make you feel better or worse about the 5-1, Greg?
Like I said, I'm focused on the how. I'm good with it.
Yeah, no, I think you probably should be good with it. And I'm going to say it. I think this team's better than last year's team. I do. I think they're deeper. I think they're more connected. I think they have a better balance of young and old. I think they have just about everybody fully bought in. I think Kuminga is almost fully bought in. But tonight goes a long way toward getting him, completely fully bought in. I think, but any team that, let's say, has 12.5 of their 13 main guys bought in, they're ahead of a lot of other teams. And so I think it's a great position to be in. And they've won 3 games now here in the first week and a half of the season without Steph Curry, who's likely going to come back in DC on Monday evening. All right, 5-1. Warriors begin the 5-game road trip. They win by 6 in OT. Warriors have won 20 of 24 on the road, going back to last year, 3-0 this year, 17 of 21 at the end of last year. And the Warriors, you want to talk about some dominant times. The last time the Warriors won 20 of 24 on the road, you got to go back to October of 2017. So that was the second of the back-to-back championship teams with Kevin Durant, the second year that Durant was on the Warriors. October 30 of 2017 to February 2nd of 2018, the Warriors won 20 of 24 on the road. They have done that now here to close out last season and with the first 3 wins of this season. How about this? And Greg, you mentioned this one. The Warriors' bad history recently in overtime, and overtime more specifically on the road. The Warriors had lost their last 11 road games. Their last overtime road win was almost 7 years ago.
What?
December 18. Yeah, nope, you heard me right. December 18, 2017. So in the midst of that 20 of 24 stretch that I just mentioned, the second Durant year, December 18, 2017, at the Lakers, the Warriors won that game by 2. That was the last overtime win on the road. Warriors did get a home win last year in December 19 of 2013, but they really struggled on the road otherwise last year, home or away. The Warriors now have won 14 in a row against the Rockets, second longest active streak for any NBA team against a single opponent. So not only is it the Warriors' current active longest streak, but it's the second longest for any team over another team in the NBA currently. It trails only the Knicks, who have won 15 in a row over. You want to take a guess who the Knicks have owned to the tune of 15 straight?
Oof. I couldn't tell you. Let's go with the Charlotte Hornets.
Oh, it's a good guess. That's a hell of a guess. That would have been in my top 2 or 3 of guesses, but it is actually the Detroit Pistons, who would have been an equally great guess. It would. I know you were probably going Charlotte, Detroit, Charlotte,
Washington.
Detroit. Washington. Yeah, exactly. Detroit. The Knicks have owned Detroit, and that's the only team that's owned another team more consecutively than the Warriors over the Rockets. Again, it goes back to before everything shut down due to COVID in February of 2020. The Warriors 71 points in the first half, season high for the first half, and the most in the first half going back to the end of last year when they scored 71 in April at the Lakers. Second clutch game of the year. We talked about clutch games last year. The Warriors had the most in the NBA, 48 a year ago. Second clutch game of the year. The other clutch game was the Clippers. So the Warriors are now 1-1 in clutch games. They're 4-0 in non-clutch games, but they do get a clutch win to even that record. And again, yeah, they played 48 last year. I think one good thing for the Warriors is they're trending to play fewer than 48 clutch games, with only 2 in the first 6 of the regular season. Some individual notes and numbers from this one. Buddy Hield has led the Warriors in scoring 5 of the first 6 games. How about that? Including each of the last 3, all wins without Steph Curry. It's been Buddy Hield, 27 points off the bench tonight. And he's had 20 or more in 5 games, all 5 of those games that I mentioned where he's been the leading scorer. And he's made 33s, most by a player in their first 6 games with a new team. And that goes back to 1996-97. O.J. Mayo was the guy he passed. O.J. Mayo had 26 threes in his first 6 games with the Mavs in the 2012-2013 season. And yeah, Buddy Hield has surpassed that. Andrew Wiggins back in the lineup. Looked like he got a little dinged up in the fourth quarter, but was able to play with the low back strain. 15 points, 3 boards, 2 assists, 1 steal. He was really effective and active early in the game. And we'll see how Wiggins comes out of this one as he returned to the starting lineup. Double-double for Draymond Green, 14 and 11. Second straight game where he has scored in double figures, which is always a good sign for the Warriors. And we talked on Just Dubs earlier today about the reevaluations of Stephen Curry with the ankle sprain and DeAnthony Melton with the back strain, as Melton's going to be out a couple of more games and reevaluated at the end of the road trip. Steph Curry might play Monday. He's going to get reevaluated tomorrow when the Warriors take on the Wizards, or they're set to go to DC and practice. Again, I'm sure that practice probably got canceled, but we should get an update on Steph tomorrow and signs pointing toward his ability to come back and play for the Warriors on Monday, which is certainly really good news if you can be 5-1 and then get Steph Curry back and go 3-1 without him. So good news on that front. Warriors also played their first overtime game since February of 2024, which of course was a loss at Atlanta. That was one of those games the Warriors had the lead in late, and then it went to overtime and all hell broke loose and they lost. And then the Warriors got hot. That was also the game before this 20 of 24 on the road started for the Warriors that's bridged these 2 seasons. So Greg, some final thoughts to you, and then we'll get some final thoughts in the YouTube chat, and we will call it a night here on Dubs OT.
If you made it this far with us in the car, on your transistor radio, listening back as a podcast, or in the YouTube chat, thank you so much, because what a wild night that was. And we made it through the chaos together. Look, set those clocks back, everybody. I don't know if there's anybody who put in crazier work hours this week than the person to the left of my screen. And I certainly for one, need to go and get some sleep after this. So set the clocks back. Enjoy some football tomorrow. 49ers will not ruin your Sunday. And 5-1. We'll take it.
Yeah, we will take it 5-1. And we'll reconvene. Enjoy the extra hour of sleep. Hopefully you have the opportunity to enjoy it and then watch some football. I do want to thank Greg Silver. Who else did we have tonight helping out? Cole LaPelt, right? And,
just us two. And Cole did some serious heavy lifting.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Excellent job from Cole LaPelt as well as Greg Silver in our San Francisco studios. Definitely want to make sure we shout out everybody in our digital team as well. Just doing incredible work from Michael Connell and Austin Scott, and also Jack Loader, just doing terrific work day to day here, helping our Dubs coverage and helping everything that we do here, show coverage, 49er coverage, Giants coverage, just all kinds of good stuff. Yeah, Robert, JD, and Greg cooked this weekend more than Kuminga and Hield. It's pretty high bar. It's pretty high bar. And as Greg will tell you, I'm kind of the Kuminga of like, I just have I have a high opinion of my impact. No, I'm kidding. I'm joking. I'm done with the jokey jokes tonight. The jokey jokes got me in trouble a little bit earlier. I'm not going to lie. Not on this show, but the jokey jokes might have got me a little bit in trouble, but it's all in good fun. And I do want to thank Cole. I do want to thank everybody, like I said, in our digital department. And I also want to shout out some folks in the YouTube chat before we ended up. Fozzie, appreciate you. East Oakland Zay, appreciate you. Drew Down, one of our initial callers. Mike Val, OPG, Alex, Robert. Just excellent stuff. San Jose Jazz fan the fourth, and Rebel the Sounds. The early goers, Ebe here. Just everybody. Christopher Nolan, some of the newbies. Don't make it your last opportunity to watch us or listen to us. Buco Sports, excellent. We appreciate you. Estimated Eyes, one of the legends of this 24-25 season in the YouTube chat. Can't always get everybody in, but we sure as heck are going to try to get everybody in as much as we possibly can. AJ Cruz 75, Erwin Kwong, can't forget Erwin. And again, if there are folks that I have missed, I certainly apologize. John J, Max Lopez, excuse me, had to go off screen there to sneeze before we wrap things up here on a Saturday. Max Lopez and Ernie Chavez, everybody in the chat, Lance Malone, too many to count, Greg. But we love our YouTube commenters, and we love the YouTube chat here on KNBR. So for Greg and Cole, I'm JD. Warriors win it 127-121. We will talk to you Monday right here on KNBR 104.5 and 680, the sports leader.
Kuminga down the lane. He scored again. What an overtime for Kuminga. Pajewski got it. He beat the shot clock buzzer and floats it home. The 31-point lead. Then enough in regulation, and they win in overtime. That was the craziest regular season game you'll ever see.
Oh, hell yeah. First of all, you guys start off liking each other.
Big, fat dub.
Ain't nobody going to stop me.
I just wake up and I can shoot it no matter if I'm playing or not.
Who are these guys? When we have a live post-game show, we're undefeated right now.
I love you, JD. Bye, sugar.